down and listen to it at his own spare time, get his own informed decision, and respond at the appropriate time. Now, this channel is important because when you are dealing with suppliers and you are dealing with consultants and contractors within a limited geographical space, then you'll find that putting up a channel is not very important. But for many of us that might have had to deal with international clients, and you have had to deal with project participants that are geographically dispersed, then proper communication channels are needed. You see, and that is where my interest started when I started in construction in South Africa, and all the consultants are geographically dispersed. The architect is in Germany, the land surveyors, they are in Sweden, I think. There's also their island engineers in somewhere, I think, somewhere in the Middle East or thereabout. So we could not at all times meet as usual. And during this process, we needed to, learn the progress of everybody, do negotiations when it is necessary, and move the project forward at every point in time. So a web-based project management system is a platform that can assist you. It's like all of us being on a Facebook for a particular project. So once I log in, everybody knows I'm there. Once I'm working on the project, everybody knows I'm working on the project. When I work on the bills, they see it. When I work on this, they see it. When the architect is changing anything, I see it. And I'll be able to tell the architect the direction you are going, we are likely to incur more costs. When we negotiate with suppliers, we put them on the web-based platform, and this ensures that negotiations are carried out well. The pre-information we need to give, we send them asynchronously to those suppliers, and when we negotiate, they have better information. And I always say that for every success that comes into a project, you should always think out of the box. Everybody has been doing it this way. How else can I do it better? I know a lot of young conservators that I see in this. Many of you have had one or two relationships with, either in the industry or in class, and I have monitored some progress of many young conservators, and I see that you have a drive, a particular drive to learn, and that is very encouraging to many of us that are leaving the industry. Because, sorry, not leaving the industry, I'm still in the industry, I'm still competitive in the industry. So, but sometimes some of us will have to leave, and some of you young guys will have to take over the reins of the profession. And one thing I keep telling young people is that we need to ensure that the profession does not fizzle out and die. And how do we ensure that? We need to improve our capacity in different areas, like the Nigerian Institute of Conservators under the Office of the Professional Development and Library is doing. We are trying to look at what other areas are we most relevant. Recently, we did some certification, carbon assessment professional. You find that it is the new direction. Sustainability is the new direction. And when it comes to sustainability, one of the places that conservators are most relevant is in carbon assessment, because carbon assessment involves life cycle costing of projects and life cycle assessment of carbon emission that exists on projects. And you find that Nigeria is a developing economy. Things are going to continue to develop. We are going to have new infrastructure. Like I said, in my estate, we are already thinking of how to generate our own electricity. We are already thinking sustainability. So you find that these are new areas I would like young conservators to key into. I found that a lot of young quantity surveyors did not key into that carbon assessment professional training. It is a certification that is issued by the Green Building Council, renewable after every 3 years, but it is going to put you in a position to be able to do carbon assessment, which is now a global thing. All right, it is not a global thing. It attracts a lot of global funding, and I think very early next year we are going to be looking at energy assessment, which is something, which is a consultancy space that nobody is kind of looking at in quant surveying right now. We do the cost assessment. Let us learn how to assess energy. You look, see, I look at my university, for instance, the University of Ilorin. They were recently moved to Band A, and a bill of 300 million was brought to them per month, and they could not cope. So they started rationing electricity between faculties and the hostels and the staff quarters. They started using, because they found out that it is cheaper for them to actually use their diesel to power their generators than for them to pay 300 million to NEPA. But one thing they have not looked at is, have they done an energy audit? What are the things they need to phase out? What are the energy requirements that they need to bring in? What sustainable form of energy do they need to introduce over a period of time? So that within a period of time, that energy cost can actually come down. Now, when we look at projects as during project planning, all right, we can as well do that consultancy. If you are going to tell your client that, Mr. Client, the energy that has been designed for you will cost you this much, but during your life cycle of the project, you are going to be paying this much for using this particular energy. But if you change it to this form, it will cost you this much right now, but you are going to pay this much during the life cycle. So we need to learn that. And the NIQS is putting all that in place. And I believe young conservators like you will key in. Before I leave the screen, I also want to mention that YQSF, please inform other organs of yours nationwide. You see, I think right here, I can speak on behalf of the president, QS Kenneth Nzekwe, that he's very passionate about young quantity surveyors. And everything we take to him about YQSF, he's always willing to accept. The certificate that you are going to receive, the first CPD that you are going to receive, I'm going to, because usually chapters, when they write in for that CPD, they pay a particular amount of money, but I'm going to request for the president to allow YQSF to put in this kind of webinars free of charge. Since it is not a paying webinar, let this CPD be issued to members that have participated free of charge. And that is going to happen. So you find that for this kind of webinars, you can actually request for CPD. I see on LinkedIn, on Facebook, many YQSF chapters go for site visits. It is important for you to know that those site visits attract CPD as well. All right. And you guys need to build your CPD, because eventually you are going to come into the fellows, you are going to need the CPD for one thing or the other. So please, when you do all these your activities, even if you feel it is not CPD required, write to my office. We are going to review it, and we are going to put up a reason for you to earn CPD for your event. This will attract more people to attend your events, because your events are usually very educative, and it is meant to grow the capacity of quantity surveyors in Nigeria, and we key to that very well. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I hope I have tried to do justice to it while not taking all your time. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, QS Dr. Keu Abdulkadir Rashid. That was an insightful session, cutting across a whole, it cut across a whole lot of things. And just like he said, YQSF, it's time for us to brag. Come on, we do a lot, and we are happy that QS Dr. Shehu Abdulkadir Rashid has recognized that. Thank you so much, sir, once again. Whatever you have, kindly drop an emoji, a round of applause for um, our dear speaker. Thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate your presence, and we've learned a lot from your session. I know we all have questions, but because of our time, we would just like one of our QSs in the house, QS Richard Akindele, to give a summary, just excerpt of all that has been discussed yesterday. Might not just a random summary of what has been discussed yesterday. So, QS Richard Akindele, you can unmute your mic.
All right, good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Not yet midday. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, QS Dr. Shehu Abdulkadir Rashid. The lecture has been so insightful, educating, very interesting. So much. We are very grateful, sir. Okay, so briefly, what I was able to catch up during the presentation. Yeah, I could see. Remember when you mentioned the construction industry play a very critical role when it comes to economic growth, most especially in Nigeria as a country. Inflation, I would just mention three. You actually mentioned more than that, which you mentioned hyperinflation, cost push inflation, built-in inflation, and also you now buttressed it to how for us to manage the risk in project management, where you made mention of so many points, but I was able to mention, I was able to capture where you mentioned clear plan strategy is important, early project planning and scheduling of labor is critical. Also, you made mention of cost-based knowledge diffusion within the project space is also germane. Then the implementation of materials policy and material management and forecasting the cost indices, you mentioned transaction cost theory, which it look at. Then also you mentioned cash flow forecasting during preparation of during the operation of meaning during the project itself. But that is not right one to do, and you advise us to do this during the preparation of bill of quantity. Then you also made mention of discounted cash flow techniques. That's how present cost value will affect the future cost. Then you also made mention of material and labor cost control. Then the last one that I was able to capture here, where you mentioned the project management is so critical to the industry. It is expected that the project management to be at the forefront of the planning, so that you can make mention of the predictive cash flow, which will be addressed during this particular stage. Then the last session, where you made mention of, you gave us quite them. I have almost 20 something point that you made mention here, where you talk about adequate preparation, jurisdiction by laws, they define the scope of work, comparative cost, understanding competitor strengths, scheduling and timing, condition for extension, payment terms. We need to know the payment terms. When are you going to pay? How is the payment going to be done? Then you also made mention of the duration of work, communication procedure, and communication procedure. You also educate us on risk allocation. You mentioned issue relating to expected situation, that's the site condition. Then you also made mention of insurance clauses, conflict resolution. What are the conflict resolution strategy that we need to do? We need to define our resolution process. Then you also made mention of data-driven approach. Yeah, then overhead consideration, contract management solution, cost-based knowledge diffusion, just as you mentioned earlier. Then we need to understand the metrics of cost related to be a database for the future project, the motive, what is the objective of the supplier. That is when we need to do strategic sourcing. It will really help us as a quantity surveyor. The non-financial element, we should understand this particular variable very well when we talk about the health and safety and their supply chain, which are so germane to the project. Then you made mention of us learning the supplier financial. We should understand the financial capability. We should also develop an active plan for us as a quantity surveyor to develop this particular techniques. And also we should develop proper communication channel. Proper communication channel is so important. Then lastly, you also talk about design a web-based platform. Then in summary, you advise us as a young surveyor to be highly innovated, to be problem solving, and also take advantage in the energy sector, just like the band A, band B from the disco that you made mention of, how we can also be of advantage, how we can take advantage of energy sector in the energy industry. We talk about renewable energy, how we can add value, and how we can be useful in the industry. So those are the area that you are able to touch, and I was able to capture. We want to say big thanks to you for your time, sir. It is so you've really for your knowledge that you share. We are so grateful. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, thank you, QS Richard. I'm sure that if we have to call everyone, they will have everything to say, and I'm sure that they won't speak less than what QS Richard has said. So it really shows that QS Dr. Shehu Abdulkadir Rashid, apologies, has really blessed us with and nourished us with so much knowledge. Right now, I will just be reading 3 questions and reactions from the chat box. Please kindly bear with us because we still have one more session before we call it a day. Okay, so I'll be reading the first one now from Ruben Alichem. Apologies if I'm not getting the name correctly. The question says, when is cash flow forecasting necessary in a construction project? When is cash flow forecasting necessary in a construction project? Would you like to take that first, or should I go on with all the other questions, sir?
Please go on. I'll take everything.
Okay, sir. Another reaction to the session is from Babatunde Oyegoke. Please, can you enlighten us more on what developers can do after subscribers have paid for properties? I think I know what this person is talking about in the extension. I will just add that when subscribers are paid for properties at a particular price, then when inflation hits and it affects construction costs and all of that, then what they have paid for goes up. So they will have to come back to the clients asking for more money and all of that. So enlighten us on what developers can do after subscribers have paid and inflation hits. That's the question. Then lastly, Oluwafemi Adisa said, I've seen the global impact of COVID on inflation, and particularly in construction projects relating to materials, labor, and time, both in Nigeria and abroad. How would you advise on future consideration of such risks in project costs for both consultant and contractor QS? That's the last question, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start with the question by Ruben. When is cash flow forecasting necessary in a project? Now, cash flow forecasting is necessary at different times, and it is required for different purposes. And it is important for us as quant surveyors not to mix the purpose for our cash flow forecast. For instance, when developers want to get estate development loans or the like, they do a cash flow forecasting. Now, what they do is they look at a kind of a selling price analysis. They do a selling price analysis. They look at a trend of how they are going to spend money for the project and the trend of how they are going to get money for that project. Now, that is a financial cash flow forecasting. It is used by banks to determine if that particular project is a viable project. All right, that is one. But we are now talking about us as quant surveyors and looking at our pricing trends. All right. Now, when we do a pricing trend, the first thing you do is to do your pricing from your first principle. And at the time you finish pricing, you now need to assess, you need to take a position, you need to advise your client or yourself on what are the necessary additions for this particular tender price. If you are pricing cement, if you are pricing concrete at 85,000 naira, is this sufficient at 15% profit? Are they likely to be increases? Are they not? So that at this time, what you are, the kind of cash flow you are now going to look at is, where am I going to get the money for doing this project? Do I have a form of retained earnings that I'm going to spend on this project? This is particular with low and medium-sized construction companies. Many times, construction companies get award letters without even knowing how to fund such projects. So you need to determine how to fund. So when you are now looking at your funding cash flow forecasting, all right, so you now want to look at how you are going to make money. I'm going to make my first money from advance payment that is coming, and this is the purpose. This is how I'm going to spend it. For me to get to my next milestone in the project, I'm going to need, if I'm going to need this much, I'm going to need 500 million. I have 200 million in my own account. That means I need additional 300 million. Where am I going to source it? I'm going to source some from trade creditors, suppliers. Probably they are going to supply you some. All right. Then you're going to source some additional fund from somewhere else. At what rate am I sourcing that additional fund? That rate should go into your tender pricing. So that cash flow is for the purpose of you getting an adequate tender prepared. All right. Then when you go to the operational cash flow, that is when you are now going to the site. And at that time, you are even going to take out a lot of your overhead. You are going to go into a material scheduling, all right, material and labor scheduling, and you are now going to be displaying how much cash is required for every operation and for every time period. So we have different times. So you need to put all this in place, understand how to do everyone individually, and do them for you to get a good delivery process in place for your project. I believe I have answered Ruben. Then for developers, it happened to all of us. Then we re-strategized, and then we understood the importance of negotiation strategies. You see, Babatunde, if you have not included that eventuality in your negotiation with the off-takers, then there's nothing you can do. That's the truth of the matter. Because any off-taker has a right to take you to court. What they say is that you have advertised that you are selling a product at 20 million and they have paid you 20 million. They expect to take possession of that product. But you see, we realize that once a product, you go to the market and you buy. And that is why developers that have money will rather finish their development before they start to take money from off-takers. But if you don't, and you are managing with what you have and what off-takers are willing to pay, then your negotiation skill with the off-takers should include some of this risk. All right? You should include some of this risk that by chance, if this happens, then you allocate the risk. that off-takers, you are liable to pay this much more if there's this much pool in the, but if there's not, so you need to allocate all the things we have discussed in our negotiation skills and strategies that is required for you is what you now put in place. If you put all this in place, then you won't have issues. But if you had not done that, then you are at the mercy of your off-takers giving you additional funds for it, because I don't see where else we can do it. Then Adisa, having seen the global impact of COVID is a force majeure. And for every force majeure, the condition of every contract has given us directives on how to address force majeure. It is not what you can predict. And that is why looking at the JCT, looking at the NEC forms, looking at the FIDIC forms, all of them has taken into consideration that there could be things that will happen that is not predictable. You cannot sit down today, despite how much problems we have in Nigeria, and say that Nigeria is going into war in the next 6 months. We can't predict that. We can suggest it. We can have it as an intuition, but it cannot be a prediction that will go into war. Who could have predicted that Kenya will go into what they are going into in the next 10 years? All right? So once it is something like COVID, which cannot be predicted by anybody except you are God or you are a prophet, and I think there are no more prophets on earth. So we can't predict it. There's nothing we can do. But what we need to understand is, for every quant surveyor, as a consultant and as a quant surveyor, the forms that is being used by your contract, understand the implications of the force majeure, understand what is required to be done when there's a force majeure. Because when you look at those relevant events, issues, and how to address them, every form has specific instructions on what you need to do, the time you need to write, the time you need to give information, what is required, what your responsibilities are during the force majeure, and what the responsibilities of the client are, so that you will not be found wanting. Once you are not found wanting, then every reasonable client will do their own part. And if they don't do their part, arbitration, mediation, or litigation will force them to do their part. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, QS Dr. Shewa Abdulkadir Rashid. We can't thank you enough. I believe that everyone that the questions were read, they've gotten answers to their question. So right now we're moving on. I know people are raising hands, but we really need to work with our time, and because of that, we won't be taking any questions or contributions for now until after we have our second speaker deliver his session. So right about now, I would like to hand over to...
Before I go, just let me quickly interrupt you here. Feel free to share my contacts with any of the members that have questions. They can send it to me directly. I abide to respond to them. And also, the NIQS will be participating in the Big Five Construct exhibition in September in Lagos at the Landmark Center. I expect that many of us will attend. I see Bola Adeyera is here, and I'm going to call you shortly because you are definitely going to participate in that Big Five construct. So I want all of us to be part of the exhibition. Because of our prior contributions, the Big Five has given us 3.5 hours. So we are going to have 3 keynote speakers and 2 panel discussions. I expect that YQSF will be well represented.